Hello and welcome to Populations Ecology 1. So exciting. Oh, aren't those so cute with the little penguins there in the front? It's like they're standing around just saying, hey, what do you think? What do you think? Maybe a bologna sandwich? I don't know. So let's see what's next. Oh, well, let's move on. There we go. So in our populations ecology, much of this is we've already talked about going into our oh dear game, but let's take a look. All right, so what we know is that an ecosystem is composed of the organisms and the physical or non-living components of an environment, as well as the interaction. So the ecosystem has everything, the living, the non-living, and how they all interact. Some examples of that would be the coral reef in the Caribbean, the Amazon rainforest. Here we have the coral reef. You have your non-living, which is your water, and your living, your coral, your fish, how all of these things interact. All right, so the physical or the non-living parts are called the abiotic. Of course, A is without, biotic, bio, life. So the non-living factors, they've never been living. Remember, keep that in mind. They've never been living. It's not that they've died now. They've never been living. Light, precipitation, temperature, soil type, chemical components, all of those are examples of abiotic factors. Now your biotic factors, oh, excuse me, sorry, I'm yawning. Not that this is boring by any means, because this is just a phenomenal video, but okay. So the biotic factors are the living parts, plants, animals, other things that make them up. Now, if we put those together, the abiotic and the biotic, then what that does is it provides an organism with all the resources they need to survive with. All right, now we look at that in conjunction with what a population is. A population being the same species at the same place at the same time is by definition a population. So it's determined by 4 different factors. First of all, the number of births, the number of deaths, the immigration, which is the movement into an area, and the emigration, movement out of an area. This will all affect the size of the population. So when we look at the number of births and immigrants, things moving into an area, and when that is greater, when there's more births and immigrants into an area than the number of deaths and emigrants, so basically more coming in versus more going out, obviously your population size is going to increase. And consequently, if the deaths and immigrants exceed births and immigrants, the population size decreases. So, and in looking at organisms have the ability to produce populations of an infinite size. They will continue to grow until, well, we'll look at what limits that. So again, if conditions are ideal and resources are plentiful, so all the conditions are ideal, then most of those offspring are going to survive and reproduce. It makes sense. If everything is good and as it, quote, should be, then they're going to survive and reproduce. So as a result, the population is going to undergo this exponential growth. Now, we've already looked at the exponential growth curve, and this is where it just grows like crazy until we have some sort of limiting factor. So here is that exponential growth curve. You have to know this. You have to know this graph. Now, it says here that it cannot sustain itself for very long. That's just the reality of being in an ecosystem. Something is going to limit it. Food, resources, mates, water, something is going to limit it. It can't just go on forever. So the number of individuals in a population usually grows until something causes that growth to stop, some limiting factor. In some cases, the numbers are going to crash when you reach that maximum number of individuals that the environment can support. In other cases, the population size just stabilizes at some sort of sustainable level. So it really depends on what's causing the population, the exponential growth to stop. All right, so the level where the population growth stops or levels off is what's called the carrying capacity. So you can see that right here. Here's that exponential growth. And then something comes in to limit it, some limiting factor, and this carrying capacity is the largest population that an environment can support over time. So let's say, and as we talked about in class, that carrying capacity can relate to so many different things. When we talked about it is the carrying capacity in an elevator or in a restaurant or even our classroom. What's the carrying capacity in our classroom? And so what is the largest the largest population the environment can support? All right, so the limiting factors are environmental factors that then limit the size of a population, and they're called limiting factors. Limiting factors can be both biotic or it can be abiotic. Either one can limit the population, and together those are going to determine that carrying capacity. Here's some great examples of abiotic: sunlight, soil, water, earthquakes, tidal waves, and for biotic, disease, predators, prey, competition, and some sort of symbiosis. Remember the commensalism, parasitism, and mutualism. Okay, the carrying capacity and the limiting factors. You can have a very large ecosystem that has lots of resources, like a tropical rainforest. It has lots and lots of resources, lots of rain, lots of vegetation, therefore lots of animals and lots of variety. So it has a very large carrying capacity because it has a lot of resources. When you have low resources, like in a desert, then that carrying capacity is going to be much lower because the resources are limited. All right, two of the main types of limiting factors that we talked about: density dependent, density independent. Now, I want to point out to you, look at where the hyphen is here. The dependent is based on density. And when we talk about density, we're talking about density numbers in the population. So when we talk about limiting factors, it's dependent on those numbers in the population. It's not dependent on the limiting factor. It's dependent on the size of the population. Okay? So when a population is large in a given environment, individuals have to compete for more resources. We saw that in the oh deer game. So the more deer we had, they then competed. You started running for the resources in order to be able to get them. And the competition can occur with the same species or different. But think about it. It's not just the deer that are looking for food and water while they're out there. They're competing with other animals for those resources. All right. Now, this predator-prey relationship is very important to maintain this balance. So if an ecosystem has too many predators, obviously the prey population is going to decline because all the predators are eating. So the prey is going to decline. Well, then when the prey declines, now there's not enough food for all the predators. So now the predators are going to decline, or they're going to leave the area in order to find food. So it's this balance back and forth. So you can see here's the prey in blue and the predators in red. So as the prey population increases, the predator population is going to decrease. And it just continues this process. You can see where it crosses over here. So as this population decreases, the predator population increases. And as this prey population's increasing, now the predator population decreases, and it just continues doing that. All right, the density dependent limiting factors that do not depend on the population size but affect all the individuals in the same way are density independent. Remember, the independent is tied to the numbers here. So natural disasters, hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, floods, fires, or human impact, clear cutting, damming, changing the course of rivers, draining wetlands, things like that, they all affect the individuals in the population, regardless of the number of in the population. So there's not any competition or anything. If you dam up an area, then you're going to have an impact downriver because there's going to be less water, and upriver because now there's flooding. Okay, so this, what I want you to do is I want you to do these next 4 slides. I want you to look at these next 4, and I want you to answer these on your paper. I want you to draw this graph here and show me which day 24, day 28, Day 30 or day 32, which one reaches its carrying capacity and stabilizes? So you got to go back and look at what carrying capacity is and which one would show that point. Here you have a disease kills most members of a predator population. What's the likely effect on the prey population? So disease comes in and kills a predator population. Think a step farther. Think back to the slide with the red and the blue. What's going to happen? Density independent limiting factor. Remember, independent is related to the number. So what factor is not related to the numbers in the population? And there you have it. Have a great evening. I hope you enjoyed the show.